Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Gathering Place brought to you by the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. And I'm your hostess. Is it host or hostess? Hostess, Marilyn Hemingway. And we have a special guest today, Greg Estevez of Edisto Island. Originally, he's an Edisto Island native and of the Hutchinson family. And we have a book to talk about. And I'm really looking forward to this. And we will get right into that discussion with Mr. Greg Estevez right after this opening. Hello, I'm Marilyn Hemingway, and welcome to A Gathering Place. I said, I'm stepping back because we have young voices who want to be heard and they're moving on something.
Branding is really important to you and your business.
Even a basic type of technology, you learn it all.
And people are
Good question. Well, folks, we're back. And let me just remind you before we bring our special guest on that I'm at Starbucks. And she probably knows there are people moving behind me, but that's not what I wanted to be reminded of. I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions or comments, please drop them. Drop them in the questions and comments section, and we'll try to get to your question and comment during the show. So let's go ahead and bring in our special guest, Mr. Greg Estevez. Greg, welcome and thank you to A Gathering Place.
Hey, good to see everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone who are here, our viewers. And we have viewers, Greg, across YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and a number of Facebook pages and groups. So we are always happy to have our regulars here and new folks also. But you're here because we're going to get into the book, but we want to talk first about the beautiful, beautiful Edisto Island. And this is where you were born and grew up. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
All right. And it's near and dear to your heart. And you have a lot to talk about. And we have a few minutes. But let's start with Edisto Island. Let's start with your memories. What do we need to know about Edisto Island?
Well, let me first start off by saying thank you so much, Marilyn. I think I met you first down in St. Helena Island. We was at an event there and we connected. And since then, we've worked on several initiatives together. So I'm thankful for the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes. With that being said, Edisto Island is one of the sea islands off the coast of Charleston. It's approximately 12 miles long and 8 miles wide. It's a coastal sea island, so you have a lot of creeks and woods and other things there. Just a little tidbits about Edisto Island. If you go back in history, Edisto Island was populated. Probably 90% of the population was African American. Okay, because we looked at, if you would, we looked at the census and we also looked at the slave schedules. Hey, Fran, how you doing? So we know that the African American population was the dominant population on the island. Well, as for me, when it comes to Edisto Island, I'm a part of the Hutchinson family, and my roots run very deep. As a matter of fact, the Hutchinson family goes back probably 7 or more generations. You probably heard of my cousin. She's we call her Emily Maggett, but most of us call her MP. She has a book out. Also, I have a niece, Cartier Brown, with Delicious Miss Brown on the Food Network. She also has a national TV show. So, that's a little bit about the Hutchinson family. Growing up on Edisto Island was a great joy because it was a tight-knit community, amongst countless friends and family members. And because Edisto Island is an island, almost everybody's related. Now, let me say this. When I say everybody's related, that goes for both black and white. Yes, for both black and white residents, particularly if you've been on the island for 4 or more generations.
Mm-hmm.
So just want to say that I have very fond memories of Edisto Island. I used to be in the Boy Scouts, various holidays, camping, of course, the beach, and also the community center, which is right across the street from my house.
So, um, you say everybody's related to each other. When we first met and we were talking, and I was telling you how I have family from Edisto Island also.
Right,
So very
right.
small world. The Smith family, uh,
Yeah,
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 Aunt
yeah.
Dot and Aunt Mo,
Yes.
and their
The,
sister
yeah,
Louise. Mhm.
Dorothy Smith. She was a school teacher for
Yes, she was.
almost for almost 50 years, and she taught at Jane Edwards. So we have very great memories of Mrs. Dorothy Smith on Edisto Island.
Yeah, and
Um,
I have great memories of visiting Edisto Island in the summer and just hanging out there. Beautiful area. And of course, our good friend Fran, who's here. Hey, Fran, and your family member. Um,
yes,
so Edisto Island, I found a map and there's some pretty pictures also. It's pretty big and people don't realize that. And you're
yes,
right. So when you're describing the forest and the creeks and the
yeah. The
tidal
tidal
creeks and the
creeks. Yes,
wetlands and the ocean front and everything, it's vast geographic footprint.
right.
So it's a beautiful area, and I do encourage folks to come down to Edisto Island. So tell me about the Hutchinson family. They were very prominent. You've listed Miss Meggett, who was I actually was someplace. Maybe it was Brunswick, Georgia. I've been on the road for like 8 days now, and I met someone and I mentioned Miss Megan and that she was a New York Times bestseller, the cookbook. As a matter of fact, I
Absolutely.
remember what the conversation was. Some folks, they wanted to know more about Gullet and they asked, oh, where do you start? And I said, start with the cookbooks. My mother loved cookbooks because she would collect the cookbooks that had the stories, that had descriptions. And I said, if you want to, the starting point is start with any cookbook that's Gullah Geechee based. And I mentioned Miss Meggett's was a recent New York Times bestseller. So they're going to go and get her book also. But tell us about the
Absolutely.
Hutchinson family. There it is. And she just celebrated 90 years, the same day that my aunt turned 90. So two
Wow.
people I know turned 90. So happy birthday, Miss Meggett, 90 years young. So tell us about the Hutchinson family, a very prominent family in Edisto.
Okay. The Hutchinson family. Like I said, it goes back 7 or more generations. But like I said, everybody's related and intertwined. So my, if I can say it this way, my great grandfather, who built the Hutchinson family home in 1885 for his wife Rosa. Um, it was built by himself, John Pearson Hutchinson, which is his uncle, and also Jack Miller. And
Yes.
yes, and all of these guys were, if I can say it this way, they were plantation carpenters, and they were very skilled. They were very skilled at what they did. As a matter of fact, just about everything, when you go back to the 17th, 18th, and probably some of the 19th century, was built by African Americans' hands. That includes every house, uh, every building, every barn, every fence, every bridge. This was all done by African American labor.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just so you know, Edisto Island had, because we looked back in the 1800s, but Edisto had 62 fully functional plantations on the island. I'm gonna say that again. 62 fully functional plantations on the island. So the island at one time had probably close to 10,000, Africans, which eventually became African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
But the Hutchinsons was instrumental because they were major farmers, but they didn't just farm for themselves. They helped out their neighbors. They took stuff into Charleston and other areas for sale. Um, they were one of the first people that had a ferry that was owned by African Americans. So that ferry company called Tookaloo was owned by my great great grandfather, and that helped commerce and business and everything, as far as that's concerned.
I want to go back to what you were saying with the master carpenters, because I come from master carpenters, the Dunmores. They came off a Cat Island plantation
Right.
that's now part of the Tomyaki Wildlife Center. And I think most people don't realize when they think of enslaved persons, they think of them being in the fields, growing and harvesting. But the peculiar institution of slavery was much deeper than that, because
Absolutely.
each plantation, you're
Absolutely.
talking 62 plantations, to really understand the scope of that, each plantation was a city unto itself. You
Absolutely.
just couldn't hop in the car and go to the grocery store. It was very self-contained. So the skill sets were not just planting and harvesting. The skill sets was cooking, it was husbandry, it was leather making and leather goods making, it was
Right.
carpentry, because you had, so that speaks to engineering, that speaks to mathematicians, it speaks to apprenticeship, because the books, it was illegal to read and write, so the books were in the head, and
Right.
they taught orally and through action by doing. Sewing, cooking, everything was
Yeah.
self-contained on that
Yeah.
plantation. So at the end of the Civil War, when people left, they left
Hmm.
with skills.
Absolutely. They had phenomenal skills that reaches far beyond anything that we can imagine. Um, you know, um, I was told that African Americans are the one who slaughtered the animals, took care of the animals. They also was the people who, I guess you can say, guided the boats through the various creeks and rivers. They did that. They loaded and unloaded everything.
Yeah.
I can keep on going, but they built all the wharfs. They built all the docks.
Yeah, the
And
longshoremen. That's why until this
yeah,
day, the
a-
majority of African Americans, because the skills were already there when they came from West Africa. These are countries, many of them that were oceanfront countries.
mhm,
Lots of water, lots of wetlands. That's why when they were brought here for their knowledge of how to grow rice, indigo,
mhm,
sea island, cotton, sugarcane, they were brought here for what they knew, the technology that they knew to grow. But along with that, it's not just what happened on land, it's what
yeah.
happened on the water.
And then the other thing is, that, the deep African distinctive arts, the crafts, the foodways. We was talking about that earlier. The music, the language. All of that is a part of not only Gullah Geechee, but it's actually a part of American history. You can't go nowhere without rice and other things that is indigenous to Africa and also the African American culture. So, and I think a lot of that was, you know, like on Edisto, you talk about the isolation because it was isolated. They were able to keep a lot of their culture and history intact.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing which was good and bad because you got to remember before 1920, the only way on and off the island was by boat.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with African Americans, it wasn't until probably the 40s when they started having cars, and most of them. So,
Yeah, and the New Deal um, under Franklin Delano Roosevelt funded the work that built the bridges. So now, people talk about before the bridges and after the bridges, and that's when things started to change and people started come from the outside. The communists started coming
right,
and mixing with the vineyard. So,
absolutely.
yeah, and things changed. So as you were talking, I was showing um, the before and after of the Hutchinson house because it
Yes,
was a restoration of this is the family home. Am I correct in saying this?
it is. And the Hutchinson house was built, you have to remember, was built barely 20 years out of slavery.
Mm,
Built barely 20 years out of slavery. It was a two-story home, and it was completed on the former Clark plantation, and was a gift to his wife, Rosa Swinton.
wow.
Yeah, and Henry Hutchinson, who lived there with his wife for probably 60 years or more. He was a hardworking and very skilled farmer, and also a carpenter. Also, he was a savvy businessman because what he did was he owned a lot of marshland, and what they would do with that marshland was they would use the pluff mud as a natural fertilizer, and that helped the cotton to grow exponentially. A lot of people don't know that they would mix soils. So they would mix the pluff mud with the soil, and as a result, that helped the cotton plant to grow exponentially. Also, one of the things I do want to say, because the Hutchinson house, as you can see in this picture, it was built 3 feet off the ground. And one of the things my grandmother shared from her grandmother was that during hurricanes and storms, this house acted as, if you would, a safe haven. It was a safe haven. So during the storm of, I'm trying to think, it was 18, um, excuse me, it was the storm of 1872, but anyway, during that storm, um, and this was before they were even naming storms. It wasn't until later they started naming hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
But Edisto Island was disseminated. I mean, it was ravished. A lot of people was lost. A lot of property was lost. But because the house was built off the ground, they were able to huddle probably 60 or 70 people in the house. And these
Wow.
people prayed and they sang, and they were able to ride the storm out, you know, together. Remember, there was no lights or nothing like that back then. So yeah, they ate food and prayed and sang songs, and they were able to ride it out together.
And
So
this
that
would be for hours because these hurricanes coming through last for hours.
yeah, this was over the whole course of the night
Wow.
and probably into the next day.
Yeah. And you can't see anything. It's dark. All you can do is hear that wind
Howling.
and
Yep.
that water rising,
Hmm.
and that's it. So
And
I'm looking
one
at the
and
picture. So
one
originally
thing
the
about the
house was
Hutchinson,
built off the ground. Go ahead.
yeah, the one thing about the Hutchinson house, it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places, and that happened in 1987. And one thing I do want to say is the Edisto Open Land Trust. John was having technical difficulties, but he's the director of the Edisto Island Open Land Trust, and we enjoy a very good partnership between the family and the land trust. So even though they actually own the home, our family home, they can't tell our story. So we tell a story, but they own the home. So it's a partnership and a great relationship that we've had, and we work together, and that's the beauty of it.
That's a really good partnership, and all of the time, I'm going to digress a little bit. So often we hear, and I actually have had conversations lately where I've had to share with folks that the Gullah Geechee Chamber has called out cultural appropriation because too
Hmm.
many times those come into our community, they extract information and they go out and they write books and do whatever and they make money, but it's not shared with the individuals who shared their personal stories, or it's
Hmm.
not shared with the community. And I use the word shared, but it's really it should be a contract because as you said, no one can tell our story. They can't tell your
Right.
family story, and
Hmm.
it would not be authentic if the family did not tell the story. So kudos to you and your family and the Edisto Island Open Land Trust that you've built this partnership
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because it's not
And,
easy.
and it's not. And one of the reasons why I wrote my first book um, is because, to be honest with you, Marilyn, I was disturbed. I was disturbed. And the reason why I was disturbed was because I had read 30 books about Edisto Island, and not one of them really captured the African American experience. Our history and culture was not captured. I am the first African American author to write a book from the African American experience about Edisto Island. So that's one of the things that I wanted you to know. Um, I'm just releasing my third book, and I thought it was appropriate because um, the Hutchinson house is, like we said before, it's in the process of being restored, thankfully, by the Edisto Open Land Trust. And when it gets restored, one of the first questions that people will have is they'll say, well, wow, this is a nice house, but who lived here? Who lived here? And the book that I wrote, which was called A Pictorial Memoir of the Hutchinsons of Edisto Island, answers this question. Um, i- if you would, this is the book here that just came out, A Pictorial Memoir of the Hutchinsons of Edisto Island. Okay?
And this is the book, and it's scrolling at the bottom of the screen. You're going to have a book signing on December 16th from 2 to 4 at the Edisto Island bookstore. So
Okay.
it's right on time for Christmas. So y'all, I'm going to do the shameless plug and let Greg take the high road for today. But go buy this book. Support. One of the reasons you want to support the local authors such as Greg, African American, is so that more African Americans see the books and they too can write the stories. Because the
Absolutely.
story of Edisto Island, that the majority of the population is African American and that story has disappeared, that's up and down the coast.
It's
We're in the Kalagiji corridor. Greg is setting an example. There are others who are writing books, but this is a whole library out there that could be stories of all these different communities. So we need to uplift our authors, our local Gullah Geechee authors who are telling the local stories. So on December 16th, you can go to the Edisto Island bookstore from 2 to 4 p.m. That's a Friday, so you could spend the weekend down at Edisto and and get a signed book from Greg. Purchase the book, or if you can't make it, you could go to Barnes and Noble. The book is available through Barnes and Noble. Greg, this is um, really an impactful book,
yes.
and the pictures.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to this. I really am.
Yeah,
Um,
one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to make it a pictorial because I could talk about the family, but many people want to see who they are. They want to actually see their faces and see who they are. So I was very intentional in this book because it's an amazing photo, photographic history of the Hutchinson house that includes rare images and personal, intimate glimpses into their lives. So I think the reader, whoever purchased this book, will get you know a great snapshot of the family that lived in this house or associated with the Hutchinson house. So I recommend everybody go and get a copy. Um, like you said, Maryland, I'll be on Edisto Island December 16th, and for the book signing, and that's a Friday from 2 to 4. Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, and Fran, she's buying the books as a Christmas gift, and that is correct, Fran. It's a perfect time to buy this book. You don't have to be from Edisto Island because the history. This is a all-encompassing history. It's American history. That's
Absolutely.
part of that bedrock is found in Edisto Island. So from any place around this nation and world, you can order this book, buy this book, and support wonderful
Yeah.
Christmas present, wonderful holiday present. Greg, the two things I want to say, and
Yes.
we're running short on time. I want you to wrap it up, but two things I do want to say. I was doing something this week, and I did a lot of traveling. I've been in 4 or 5 different cities in the last 8 days, 2 states. And
Wow.
one of my things that occurred to me, I was doing something and I thought it's so much easier in some ways for African Americans to be presented in an exotic way. We're either dancing, entertaining, you can
Mm,
get those books or music or stories. What we don't get is the everyday normal life of African Americans, has
right.
families in their houses, the normality of being human we don't get as African Americans. Our
Abs-
stories are either entertainment or we're overcoming strife. We're being extra or we're being strong or we have to overcome all the time. And let me tell you, that creates fatigue. What we don't get are the pictures and the stories of us just being families,
right.
us just enjoying a home that was built by our father and grandfather and great grandfather and a legacy that was handed down. That we don't get the beauty of being normal.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why books like this are just so very important, and it's important that we support them. And then the second thing, Greg, you participated in our focus group in Charleston for the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail,
I did. I
which
did.
will
Thank
launch
you.
in 2023. And it's a story that you told along with the other ladies, the young ladies
Yes.
from Edisto
Miss
Island.
Miss Mary Mungeon and
Yes,
also Mrs. Margaret Mitchell Rivers was there.
yes. And
Yes.
tomorrow night we are um, unveiling the logo for the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail. So I think you
Okay.
signed up. I know I sent you the invitation, but please RSVP if you can. But the story in the focus group that I have told since then, because it just has stuck with me, it's the description of when someone was born on the island and the drums announced
Mm-hmm.
the birth.
Right.
And I think Miss Mary was even it was 2 o'clock in the morning when you heard the drums being played and you can hear the drums traveling across the water, across Edisto
Mm-hmm.
Island, because you realize water carries sound so well.
Absolutely.
And then someone else would pick it up with the other drum, with their drums. And it would go
Mm-hmm.
across the island until everyone on the island knew that there was a new birth on that island.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still get chills
Mm-hmm.
just
Absolutely.
even
That
sharing
was
that story.
that was one of the ways that they communicated. You have to remember this was way before telephones, cars, and the such. They would actually sing on the water, and they would also play drums, and they could send a message probably within minutes from one side of the island to the next. And this is a distance of 12 miles because, like you said, the water carries the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so interesting. I wrote about that in my first book. The ways that they communicated, and that was just one of the ways. Several ways they communicated because shapes and colors are very significant in African American culture, and,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell you a lot about the individual. For instance, on Edisto Island, a lot of times the women tied up their hair. The headscarves and the color of them will tell you the significance of that particular woman, if she was, one of the matriarchs, or she was, you know, another young lady. So if you look at the color of her headscarf, and I didn't notice at the time, it would tell you who she is and her significance.
Wow, that's beautiful. I'm gonna have to get your first book too.
Yes,
I just
please.
love it because it tells the story, it paints the picture, it gives this connection that we all need to our history, to who we are, and then take it and share it with future generations because the strength and the power that came out of those lives um, before emancipation and after emancipation, that if we knew how powerful our people were, that's in our blood.
Right,
That's who we
right,
are. So to
right.
hear those stories, to think that they thought about this, someone thought to say this color means something, or I
Mm-hmm.
remembered from
Mm-hmm.
Africa and I passed it on so that they
Mm-hmm.
knew that this color or the manner in which the wrap was
Mm-hmm.
wrapped around the head meant
Yep.
something, told a
Yep.
story in and of itself. Um,
Yep. Colors was considered spiritual.
yeah,
Paint blue, the color of the sky.
had that
Color,
conversation last week too.
yeah, color of the water.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep the Hanks out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, Greg, we're going to wrap up here. I want to thank you for coming. You know,
Yes.
and the folks, unfortunately, we have to wrap up, folks, because Greg is short on time, and I'm at the meter, and I don't want to give it to you.
Yeah.
But, Greg, any last words?
No, I just want to thank the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank you, Marilyn, for everything that you do. You know, um, Not only in South Carolina, but like you said, throughout the Gullah Geechee corridor. I mean, you are a major player. You're a major influence, and we thank you so much. For your platform and everything that you do. So
I
that's
want to
my
say
final
thank
words.
you. Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate that. It's always a delight for me. I love what I do. Uh, I'm learning something every day
Right.
about my community, about being Gullah Geechee, about who I am. And I get to meet wonderful people like you who are writing wonderful books or pulling together, editing pictures together so that they tell our story. And this is what we have to uplift and celebrate. So I want to
Right.
thank you for coming on the show. And I want to remind everyone on Friday, December 16th, you have a chance to meet Craig, get a signed book, buy a book at Edisto Island Bookstore. Is it 547 Highway 174, Edisto Island? And this will be on our Facebook page. So if you forget, you can come back to the page and watch this show again and get the details. And if you can't make it on December 16th, go to Barnes and Noble and they'll take care of you there. And we want to thank Fran and Sheila. We want to thank you for joining us today. And yes, every time we come on, we love to have you
Hey
join us,
Sheila.
Sheila. Yeah.
Hey
Um,
Sheila.
Every Wednesday and Sunday at 4 o'clock, you can catch a gathering place, and we bring on change makers impacting the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. We celebrate a gathering place where we gather together to share our stories. So thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Fran, and thank you to the others who joined us today. And you didn't share comments with us, but we see you out there. And thank you very much. Greg, thank you for joining me today, and we'll be talking.
All right. Take care.
All right, you take care too. We'll see you later. Well, everyone, just really enjoyed a few minutes with Greg Estevez. And just to remind you, on Friday, December 16th, 2 to 4 p.m., he'll be at the Edisto Island Bookstore, ready to sign your book and wonderful Christmas presents. So go ahead and purchase those books. I also want to remind everybody that our office will be closed December 16th through January 16th. We're closing the office so we can all have a break, and we need a break sometimes. And so December 16th through January 16th, we will come back on January 16th to the regular office hours. But we kind of need a vacation and a holiday. Just wanted to let everybody know that. And then get your smartphones out, because tomorrow night we are going to unveil the official Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail logo, and this is going to be done virtual, so you can RSVP. And let me go ahead and pull that up for everybody so that you can RSVP. Just take your smartphone out and click on that QR code, and that'll take you to your RSVP invitation. I'll have it up there for a few seconds. Just whip those smartphones out and take this picture. And you can join us tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. at the virtual debut of the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail logo. And the trail website itself will launch in 2023, but we want to share our beautiful logo. And just as Greg tells the story in his books, the logo tells a story also. I really just capture the heart of the Gullah community, the Gullah culture. So please join us tomorrow night, but make sure you whip out that smartphone and take a picture of that QR code. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As always, we enjoy having you and enjoying your presence. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of this Wednesday. See you later.
What was that? I was just like, that was the initial thoughts and how to deal with the Jewish population. Oh, yeah, that was